The last time a Canadian Prime Minister secured a fourth consecutive term was back in 1908. At that time, the country's population was smaller than Toronto's is today. Justin Trudeau, who has led Canada since 2015 and is now in his third term, believes he can achieve the same feat. Despite trailing the opposition Conservatives in polls for most of 2023, he's convinced that victory is within reach. If he pulls it off, it would be a remarkable achievement, one that would surpass even his father, Pierre Trudeau, who narrowly lost his own bid for a fourth term in 1979. In the 2015 federal election, Trudeau's strongest critique of Stephen Harper was the sluggish growth under his leadership. Trudeau accused Harper of having the worst record of any Prime Minister on economic growth since R.B. Bennett during the Great Depression, and indeed, Harper's tenure was marked by slow economic recovery in the aftermath of the 2008 global financial crisis, particularly in Ontario's struggling manufacturing sector. Trudeau's attack on Harper was accurate in diagnosing the issue. Weak economic growth was a significant challenge, but the solution Trudeau offered and his approach to addressing it has proven far less successful than many hoped. Under his government, per-person economic growth has averaged just 0.3% annually, barely better than the 0.5% achieved under Harper. Unfortunately, the very issue Trudeau criticized remains unresolved. The Trudeau government's spending increases and mounting deficits have done little to improve Canada's economic performance. So, is Canada really growing poorer? Let's dig deeper. Canada's GDP per capita now lags the US by almost 29%. That's troubling. Why? Because GDP per capita is an important reflection of people's income and overall living standards. And if Canada's numbers are slipping while the US pulls ahead, well, that means Canadians are, on average, falling behind. This gap became especially pronounced about a decade ago when US tech giants soared and Canada's economy was hit hard by a severe drop in crude oil prices. To make matters worse, the Toronto Stock Exchange has vastly underperformed the S&P 500. Even when adjusting for the influence of a few dominant tech companies in the US, the American market still outshines Canada's. Simply put, US companies are generally doing better than their Canadian counterparts. But there's more bad news. Canada's investment in research and development is shockingly low compared to the US. This leaves Canadian companies and researchers with fewer resources to innovate and drive breakthroughs that could lift the economy. These trends are concerning, but when we broaden our comparison to other wealthy nations, Canada doesn't look quite as bad. Outside of the US, Canada's GDP per capita is more competitive, though there's still plenty of room for improvement. One of the problems is Canada's over-reliance on low-growth sectors. The stock market is disproportionately weighted toward industries like oil and gas, and innovation is being stifled. Additionally, too many Canadians are struggling to afford housing, food, and other basic necessities. The OECD predicts Canada will be the worst-performing advanced economy in the next decade. This stands in stark contrast to Canada's earlier days of prosperity. In the early 20th century, Canada was booming, driven by its rich natural resources. The post-Wawuwatu period saw an influx of immigrants, industrialization and investment from the UK and US, which helped turn Canada into one of the wealthiest countries on Earth. Today, Canada is still a huge country, rich in resources, second only to Russia in land area, with vast coastlines and massive oil reserves. But despite all this, Canada is not the economic powerhouse it could be. The problem? Productivity. Simply put, Canada's economy is not growing fast enough because its productivity levels are stagnant. Why is productivity so low? Well, Canada's economy is heavily service-based. About 70% of GDP is from services, which have been underperforming. Over the past 2 decades, key sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and construction have all seen sluggish growth. For productivity to improve, workers need better tools, training, and new technologies to increase efficiency. Historically, Canada's immigrant influx helped boost productivity, but recent immigration trends have focused on lower-skilled workers, which puts downward pressure on GDP per capita. Furthermore, Canada's business investment has been weak. Since 2015, investment per worker has dropped by 20%, and compared to other nations, Canada's investment in business development and worker productivity is alarmingly low. This sluggish investment is a key factor in Canada's productivity crisis. The government's policies have compounded the issue. Public consumption, housing, and transfers to households have increased the share of GDP dedicated to consumption, leaving fewer resources for business investment in machinery, factories, and technology. Instead of growing Canada's business sector, people and companies are increasingly investing in the property market, driving housing prices to dizzying heights. This real estate boom has been fueled by speculation, with 1 in 5 home purchases now made by investors. Meanwhile, household debt in Canada has reached a dangerously high level, 185% of disposable income, putting the country at risk of financial instability. Though Canada's economy isn't on the verge of collapse, these issues signal that the country is entering precarious territory. While Canada's economy is facing challenges, there's reason for hope. The Canadian banking system is well regulated, and the country has shown resilience in the past, particularly after the 2008 financial crisis. Canada is also emerging as a global leader in artificial intelligence, thanks to groundbreaking research and innovation in the field. With its geopolitical stability, abundant natural resources, and highly educated workforce, Canada remains an attractive place to live. But Canada needs to stop measuring itself against the US and chart its own path forward. It must invest more in research and development, foster competition, and focus on breakthrough innovations. The country can't rely on its natural resources alone. It needs to diversify its economy to thrive in the 21st century. Canada has a vast landmass, but much of it is uninhabitable. To accommodate a growing population, the country needs to build more housing in urban centres, with better regulation and enforcement. A change in government is needed to break free from complacency and push for fresh ideas and bold solutions. Canada is at a crossroads. The question is, will it rise to the challenge and reinvent itself, or will it continue to drift as a country stuck in the past? The future is still unwritten.